I was 76 years old when I received my first formal reprimand. I hadn't stolen from the register, insulted a paying customer, or shown up to my shift intoxicated. I was written up for a bowl of soup. The manager handed me the pink warning slip at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday, right as the midday lunch rush was thinning out. "Company policy, Dorothy," he muttered, entirely unable to meet my eyes. I stood there, staring at the paper, trembling in my arthritic hands. After 12 years of wiping down these laminate tables, I finally had written proof that corporate considered kindness an unauthorized expense. Outside, a steady rain tapped against the diner windows. Inside, the heavy, comforting scent of stale coffee, caramelized onions, and grilled bacon hung in the air. The soup in question had gone to a man named Walter. For months, Walter had come into the diner every Wednesday at precisely 1:30 p.m. He always came alone, and he always ordered the cheapest item on the menu. A single cup of black coffee that he'd stretch for nearly 2 hours. He wore the same faded green jacket regardless of the season, its cuffs frayed into loose threads, one sleeve held together by clumsy hand-sewn stitches. And he always carried an old, battered red thermos. The paint had chipped away so severely that patches of raw silver metal gleamed underneath. I never once saw him drink from it. He just held it. He carried that thermos the way other people carry old photographs, or wedding rings, or grief. Our arrangement began on a freezing afternoon last winter. I had walked past his booth and noticed his weathered hands shaking as he counted out coins. Beside his coffee cup, it wasn't enough. He quietly pushed 2 nickels aside, then another, before stopping with a defeated sigh. There was no money for food. "You okay, hun?" I asked, walking over. He looked up and offered the kind of tight, polite smile people wear when they are drowning but don't want a lifesaver. "Just doing math." I didn't ask any more questions. I just walked behind the counter, ladled a bowl of hot chicken noodle soup, and set it down in front of him. "Kitchen made extra," I lied smoothly. Walter stared at the steaming broth for several long seconds before picking up his spoon. He didn't thank the soup. He looked up and gave me a single, firm nod. He understood the lie, and he appreciated the grace of it. From that day on, it became our unspoken ritual. Every Wednesday, coffee, a bowl of soup, and the quiet presence of that red thermos. The manager never noticed until another customer saw the exchange and complained. Suddenly, corporate was involved. Words like inventory loss and unauthorized discounts floated around the break room. By Tuesday, I had my warning. One more violation, and was terminated. That job mattered. My meager Social Security check barely covered rent, and my arthritis medication seemed to jump in price every month. The diner wasn't just pocket money. It was my survival. That evening, I sat alone in my quiet apartment, staring at the warning notice under the yellow light of my kitchen lamp. The radiator clicked and hissed. The television murmured softly in the background. My mind drifted to Martha, not my wife, my daughter. She passed away 8 years ago from cancer. She was only 43. Sometimes, grief changes shape. At first, it feels like violent drowning. Later, it settles into a persistent background noise, like a refrigerator humming in an empty room. You stop noticing it until everything else gets quiet. When Wednesday arrived, it brought the rain with it. Walter walked through the doors, right on schedule, same frayed jacket, same red thermos, same careful smile. He ordered his coffee. Nothing else. I stood paralyzed behind the counter, staring at the soup station. I knew one bowl wouldn't bankrupt the diner, but it would cost me my livelihood. I felt the sharp edges of the folded warning slip in my apron pocket. I looked at Walter, then back at the soup. Choosing between the rules and my own compassion shouldn't have been so agonizing, but Elle was terrified. I carried the coffee over to his table. Nothing else. Walter noticed immediately. His eyes flicked toward the empty space on the table, over to the steaming soup station, and finally back to my face. He gave me that same slow nod. There was no disappointment in his eyes, no anger, just a quiet, terrible understanding. Somehow, that felt worse than if he had yelled. He sat quietly by the window for an hour, watching the rain slide down the glass. When he finally stood to leave, he didn't head straight for the door. Instead, he stopped at the register and placed his heavy red thermos on the counter. "Could you hold this for a minute?" he asked. "Bathroom?" "Sure," I said. I waited. 5 minutes turned into 10. 10 turned into 15. When I finally asked one of the busboys to check outside, he reported that the parking lot was empty. Walter was gone. Panic fluttered in my chest. I reached for the thermos, worried something had happened to him, when I noticed a folded piece of paper wedged beneath the handle. My name, Dorothy, was written across the front. I unfolded it. "Thank you for treating me like a human being." Confused, I unscrewed the lid of the thermos. I froze. The inside wasn't stained with coffee. It was packed to the brim with neatly folded dollar bills. It wasn't thousands money, but it was easily several $100s. Far more than a struggling waitress expected to see on a rainy Wednesday. Tucked among the bills was a second note. "My wife and I owned a hardware store for 42 years. She carried this thermos to work every single day. After she died, the world got very cold. I started putting $1 inside this thermos. I witnessed someone showed genuine kindness. Just $1. Sometimes more. You gave me soup for 11 months. Nobody else noticed I was hungry. Nobody else asked if I was okay. Please accept this. And please, don't give away any more soup if it's going to cost you your job." The tears came so fast and thick that my knees gave out. I had to pull out a stool and sit down as the neon signs of the diner blurred into streaks of color. That was how the manager found me sobbing silently behind the cash register. I couldn't speak, so just handed him the note. He read it once. He read it twice. Then he read it a third time. Without saying a single word, he turned and walked into the kitchen. I thought he was going to write me up again for crying on the clock. Instead, he returned 10 minutes later, carrying an old glass tip jar and a piece of cardboard. He taped the sign right next to the register for everyone to see. "Community Soup Fund. Leave $1. Take a bowl. No questions asked." He dropped a crisp $20 bill into the jar himself. It didn't take long for the community to notice. Customers started dropping their change into the glass. $1 here, $5 there. Truck drivers, exhausted teachers, construction workers, single mothers, and retirees, they all contributed. The fund never ran empty. 3 weeks later, the diner door chimed, and Walter walked in. I nearly jumped over the counter to hug him. "I thought something terrible had happened to you," I scolded, wiping my hands on my apron. He smiled, a real one this time. "Just needed some time." "What's that?" "You started it," I told him gently. Walter stared at the overflowing jar for a long, quiet moment. Then, with trembling hands, he unscrewed the lid of his empty thermos, reached into his own pocket, and dropped a single folded dollar into the community fund. Neither of us said much after that. We just sat together by the window, drinking coffee and watching the rain. These days, people talk endlessly about what's wrong with the world. Maybe they're right. Maybe the economy is harder. Maybe people are more isolated. Maybe everyone you pass on the street is carrying an invisible weight much heavier than we can comprehend. But standing behind that diner counter taught me something vital. True kindness usually isn't loud. It doesn't go viral on the internet, and it doesn't make the evening news. It's a bowl of soup. It's a worn-out thermos. It's a stranger taking a moment to actually see another stranger. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that is the exact tether that keeps a person anchored to the earth for one more day. In a world that is constantly demanding to know what something is worth, I've learned the real answer is rarely printed on a receipt. It's found in what we are willing to give away,